In 2018, North Korea put on a show for the world. Explosions ripped through the mountain at Punggye-ri, sealing its nuclear test tunnels in front of international cameras. The regime claimed the site was destroyed forever.
The regime has begun dismantling its Punggye-ri nuclear test site. According to 38 North, satellite imagery shows several key operational support buildings have been destroyed.
But what if that was never the whole truth? New satellite images now reveal signs of hidden activity, and Defectors' old sketches of buried rail tunnels match what can be seen today.
A new satellite image has shown indications of new activity at the nuclear test site in North Korea.
If they are right, Punggye-ri is not dead at all, and what is buried beneath could be more terrifying than anyone ever imagined. The mountain that eats bombs. In the far reaches of North Hamgyong province stands a rugged and isolated mountain range. Very few outsiders have ever been allowed near it, but within these peaks lies Punggye-ri, North Korea's notorious nuclear test site. For almost 20 years, the secret blasts carried out here have drawn global alarm because this is where North Korea built and detonated the weapons that shook the world. The first underground nuclear test erupted here on October 9, 2006, and it shocked the world. For years, North Korea had threatened to build nuclear weapons, but most outside experts doubted the regime could actually cross that line. That morning, seismographs in South Korea, Japan, China, and even as far away as the United States recorded the unmistakable signature of an underground nuclear detonation. What startled governments and scientists alike was not just that North Korea had tested a bomb, but that it had done so in defiance of every warning, sanction, and international plea. It was no longer bluffing. It had proved itself a nuclear power. From that moment, the blasts only grew in scale. 6 tests were carried out between 2006 and 2017, each one larger than the last. Later detonations were so powerful, they shook entire towns across the Chinese border and triggered earthquakes that rattled through Japan. Seismologists tracked shockwaves racing through the crust of the earth, proof that the explosions were intensifying far beyond the first test. These were not quiet experiments hidden away in a mountain. They were deliberate, devastating demonstrations. Punggye-ri had become North Korea's stage, and the whole world was forced to watch as underground fire thundered through the rock. On the surface, Punggye-ri looks unremarkable. Satellite images show only dirt roads, small support huts, and the faint scars of old landslides. Yet what those images don't reveal is the network of tunnels carved with precision. Each tunnel snakes inward in a zigzag pattern, making it harder for shockwaves and radiation to escape. At the far end, the tunnels curve into fishhook bends, a design meant to trap radioactive gas and seal the chamber after detonation. In effect, the mountain itself becomes part of the weapon, swallowing the explosion whole. There are 4 known portals at Punggye-ri. Analysts call them Tunnel 1, Tunnel 2, Tunnel 3, and Tunnel 4, or East, North, South, and West. Tunnel 1 was used for the very first nuclear test in 2006. Tunnel 2 hosted several more. Tunnels 3 and 4 were never confirmed to have been used, but evidence suggests they were prepared for testing. Each portal appears from above as a dark opening at the foot of a slope. What happens once you go inside is far less clear. For years, experts have tried to map the site. Seismic waves from explosions gave hints about tunnel depth. Satellite photographs revealed equipment being brought in and debris being carried out. Still, the full layout remains hidden. How many chambers branch off from the main shafts? How far do the tunnels run? Are there storage areas or escape routes? These questions remain unanswered because no international inspectors have ever been allowed full access to explore Punggye-ri. Then, all of a sudden, something shocking happened. North Korea announced that the site would be the 2018 blast. In May 2018, a small group of foreign journalists, carefully selected and escorted by the regime, were brought to witness the event. Cameras captured the moment as explosives ripped through the entrances of the tunnels that had once hidden the country's most secretive operations. The scene was both dramatic and surreal. Mountainsides shuddered as shockwaves rolled through the rocky ground. Dust and smoke burst into the air, covering the ridges in a gray haze. Wooden support structures collapsed in splinters, and debris cascaded down the slopes. The demolition was carried out in stages. First, the eastern portal was destroyed with a thunderous blast that echoed across the valleys. Then the northern and southern portals followed, each collapse marked by plumes of dirt and stone rising into the sky. Finally, the western tunnel, believed to be the least developed of the 4, was sealed. By the end of the day, all visible access points had been reduced to wreckage. The destruction was not limited to the tunnels. Observation posts, barracks, and other support buildings were also leveled. These structures had housed guards, technicians, and monitoring equipment during years of nuclear activity. Storage sheds and small administrative huts were torn down, leaving only scattered debris. Communications lines and power facilities that once supported the test operations were also removed. Defectors sketches. The explosions did not answer the deeper question of what lay inside the mountain. With the tunnels collapsed, the outside world was left with only speculation and second-hand accounts. That is where the testimonies of defectors became crucial. These were men who had worked in or around the site before escaping North Korea, and their descriptions painted a very different picture than the simple tunnel mouths shown to foreign reporters. One recurring detail stood out. Several defectors described rail tracks laid deep inside the mountain. These were not visible in satellite photographs, nor in the demolitions broadcast in 2018. Yet according to their testimony, small-gauge tracks ran through the hidden galleries. If true, they would be essential for moving heavy equipment underground. The sketches they drew were haunting. They did not show rough caves hacked out of stone, but structured systems with rail spurs feeding directly into the blast chambers. The presence of rail lines inside the mountain would not have been unusual for North Korea. The regime has a long history of carving underground facilities for military use. In the 1970s and 1990s, South Korea discovered infiltration tunnels that the North had dug under the demilitarized zone. These tunnels were reinforced, wide enough to move troops and weapons, and some stretched for kilometers. They were designed to allow thousands of soldiers to pass through undetected. The skills and resources that created those projects could easily have been applied to Punggye-ri. That history makes the defectors' claims about rail systems far more credible. The technical details also aligned with established underground engineering practices. Narrow-gauge tracks are commonly used in mining and military bunkers because they can carry heavy loads through confined spaces where trucks cannot operate. In such systems, carts can be used to move rock, fuel, machinery, or explosives in and out continuously. Applied at Punggye-ri, this would mean the mountain was more than a static chamber for one-time detonations. It could have been serviced, expanded, and reinforced on a scale that would not be possible without such transport. The idea was chilling. Trains, even small ones, could carry the kind of loads trucks could not. Items like machinery, nuclear components, and even warheads in assembly could be brought directly to the test chambers. With rails, the mountain was not just a hiding place for bombs, but a functioning factory of destruction. One defector reportedly explained how workers used the rail lines to move drilling rigs and reinforced casings into position. Another described carts carrying drums of cement, steel supports, and protective shielding. These details suggested an industrial-scale operation, the kind of infrastructure built to last decades rather than for a handful of tests. But it was not only the rails that alarmed observers. The defectors also spoke of side chambers branching off the main tunnels. These were not described as storage closets or temporary digs. They were said to be wide enough to hold entire machines. Some sketches showed equipment bays where generators could be installed to power underground work. Others hinted at galleries that curved away into the darkness, their purpose left unstated. If accurate, these descriptions pointed to a site designed not only for detonation, but for sustained underground operations. Possible functions of these chambers varied. A generator room would mean power for lighting, ventilation, or heavy machinery, which would allow workers to remain underground for long periods. Storage bays large enough for machinery could hold drilling equipment, casting molds, or even assembly areas for nuclear devices. Some defectors implied that the chambers allowed multiple preparations to be carried out simultaneously, ensuring a constant readiness for new detonations. Such an arrangement would be consistent with a facility built for efficiency and secrecy. For a long time, the global community dismissed these stories. Without photographic proof, many experts believed the defectors' accounts were exaggerations or propaganda intended to stir fear. Most chose to focus only on what could be verified through seismic data and satellite images. The men who spoke out did so at enormous personal risk, knowing that if their identities were exposed, the consequences for them or their families could be fatal. That risk alone underscored the seriousness of their claims, whether or not they could be immediately proven. That is when the rumors began to sound less like fantasy. A secret rail system would explain how North Korea could expand its nuclear program so quickly. It would explain how test after test could be prepared in near secrecy, without endless convoys giving them away. In the years that followed, attention turned to satellites, which became the only reliable way to monitor the site. What they revealed next took the world by shock. Satellites catch the first moves. In March 2022, commercial satellite companies scanning North Korea's northeast mountains detected something that had not been seen in years. Punggye-ri, the nuclear test site the world had been told was destroyed in 2018, was showing unmistakable signs of activity again. The photographs revealed changes in the landscape that could not be explained away as natural. They were the product of human work, and they raised new alarms about what was happening inside the mountain. High-resolution images showed fresh stacks of lumber and building materials placed where none had been before. Dirt roads that had faded into the terrain during years of disuse were scraped clean and resurfaced. Tire marks cut into snow and mud revealed steady vehicle movement in and out of the restricted zone. Small huts appeared on slopes where only untouched ground had been seen in earlier images. Spoil piles of dirt and rock shifted in shape and size, a clear indicator that excavation was underway beneath the surface. For analysts studying the photographs, these details added up to one conclusion. North Korea was rebuilding Punggye-ri. The fact that satellites revealed this activity carried its own weight. During the Cold War, only the most powerful governments had the ability to monitor nuclear sites from above. In the 1960s, the United States launched its Corona program, a secret satellite project designed to photograph Soviet missile and nuclear facilities. The images were shot on film canisters that had to be ejected from space and caught in midair by aircraft. These missions showed tunnels, airfields, and bunkers that spies on the ground could never reach, but the photographs were locked away as classified material. Only government officials and military analysts ever saw them. By the 1980s and 1990s, spy satellites had improved to the point where individual vehicles could be identified from orbit. Yet the images remained in the hands of intelligence agencies. When North Korea began its nuclear program at Yongbyon and later expanded to Punggye-ri, ordinary citizens and journalists had no way of confirming what was happening. Reports about construction or tunnel digging relied almost entirely on government statements or seismic data from detected blasts. Seismographs could confirm that a nuclear test had occurred because the explosion sent measurable waves through the Earth's crust. However, seismic readings could not show what construction was underway before a test or what maintenance was being done after. This changed in the late 1990s and early 2000s with the rise of commercial satellite imaging. Companies like Digital Globe, Maxar, Airbus, and later Planet Labs began offering high-resolution photos to clients around the world. For the first time, journalists, independent researchers, and universities could buy and analyze images of restricted zones that had once been hidden from public view. In the early 2000s, published satellite images of Yongbyon's nuclear reactor and missile facilities shocked readers because they no longer had to rely on anonymous intelligence leaks. They could see the buildings, roads, and activity for themselves. North Korea was aware of this growing visibility. The regime began using camouflage, fake buildings, and even altered terrain to try to deceive surveillance. At times, construction activity was hidden under tree cover or timed to avoid known satellite orbits. Despite these efforts, satellite companies continued to improve their technology. By the 2010s, resolution had become sharp enough to detect not only large buildings, but also small huts, retaining walls, and tire tracks in the snow. The secrecy that had once shielded Punggye-ri was fading. That is what made the March 2022 photographs so important. They did not simply show random changes on a mountainside. They showed deliberate construction steps that matched patterns seen at other active military sites such as Yongbyon, where nuclear reactors have long been built and maintained, and Sohae, the satellite launch station where rockets are assembled and tested. At both of those facilities, satellites have repeatedly documented the same sequence of events: roads prepared for heavy use, support huts built near key structures, and spoil piles shifted as underground work advanced. Seeing the same indicators at Punggye-ri carried a clear implication. It meant the site was being restored with the same careful preparation used at North Korea's most important military complexes. The resurfacing of roads indicated preparation for heavy traffic. The appearance of huts suggested housing or storage for workers and equipment. The movement of spoil piles showed fresh digging inside the mountain. Another factor made the discovery more significant. The images were not released by intelligence agencies. They came from private companies whose data was available to anyone with the resources to purchase it. This meant the evidence could not be hidden or filtered through political statements. Independent analysts, news outlets, and even the general public could study the same photographs and draw their own conclusions. For the first time, the monitoring of Punggye-ri had become a matter of open-source intelligence. Once the broader picture of renewed activity was established, attention turned to specific portals at the site. The most striking developments were at the western entrance. The resurrection of the West Tunnel No. 4. The first indicator was the construction of retaining walls around the slope at Tunnel 4. These structures were carefully positioned to brace the earth and prevent the hillside from caving in while work crews cleared the tunnel. Retaining walls are a standard feature of active tunnel engineering projects, whether in civilian mining or nuclear test sites. Their appearance at Tunnel 4 told experts that it was being stabilized for continued use. Other changes quickly followed. Satellite images showed that access road was carved up to the tunnel mouth. This allowed vehicles to reach the site directly and move materials in and out with ease. 2 small buildings appeared near the entrance. At first glance, they looked like simple huts, but their placement suggested they were functional support structures. Such buildings typically store tools, shield workers, or house monitoring equipment. Their presence showed that the activity at Tunnel 4 was planned, systematic, and designed to support a workforce for more than a few days. But why would North Korea return to Tunnel 4 instead of cutting new chambers into the mountain? Digging a brand new tunnel into hard granite can take years, even with modern machinery. It requires drilling through fresh rock, removing vast amounts of debris, and stabilizing each section as it advances. Clearing rubble from an old tunnel is much faster and cheaper. The route already exists, the geological stability has already been tested by previous use, and the debris can be removed in a fraction of the time needed to dig a new shaft. For a regime seeking to return quickly to nuclear testing, reviving a sealed portal is the obvious choice. This is not without precedent. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union reused test tunnels at their nuclear ranges. At the Nevada test site, existing tunnels were reopened, reinforced with concrete plugs, and used for multiple detonations. At Semipalatinsk in Kazakhstan, Soviet engineers regularly recycled old test chambers instead of starting from scratch. In both cases, clearing rubble was a standard way to save time while still preparing a site capable of containing a nuclear blast. Seeing the same pattern at Tunnel 4 was a reminder that North Korea was following a proven nuclear playbook. The danger did not end with simple reuse. Some experts noted that if Defectors' sketches of underground rail spurs inside Punggye-ri contained any truth, reopening Tunnel 4 could reconnect to a larger hidden network. In Cold War history, such systems existed. The Soviet Union built rail-accessible tunnels to move nuclear warheads deep into mountains. China constructed entire underground complexes, sometimes called underground Great Walls, where missiles and nuclear components could be stored and moved on rails. If North Korea had attempted something similar, then clearing Tunnel 4 might not just provide space for a test. It could restore access to a transport system designed to move heavy machinery, fissile material, or even assembled warheads out of sight of satellites. Yet the danger at Punggye-ri was not confined to the western entrance. Attention turned to Tunnel 3, where the evidence suggested something even more alarming. Tunnel number 3's dark readiness. Unlike the western entrance, which showed signs of being dug out and rebuilt, Tunnel 3 has never looked abandoned. Satellite images revealed small but telling details that suggest it has been maintained all along. Cables ran across the surface and into the tunnel mouth. These were not discarded debris, they were positioned in a way consistent with active power or ventilation systems. Such systems are essential for keeping air flowing inside a tunnel and for running monitoring equipment. Their presence meant that the south portal was being kept alive. Drainage channels provided another clue. Analysts observed that water runoff around the south portal was being managed, with channels cleared of debris and functioning properly. For any underground facility, this is critical. A nuclear tunnel cannot be allowed to flood or weaken, especially if it is intended to contain an explosion chamber. Proper drainage pointed directly to ongoing maintenance. This made Tunnel 3 very different from the others. Tunnel 4 showed the heavy work of revival. Tunnel 3 showed no such effort because it did not need it. Its infrastructure was intact, and the surface changes suggested that workers were making sure it stayed that way. The rumors inside the expert community added to the fear. Some specialists privately concluded that Tunnel 3 could already host a nuclear test. The supporting infrastructure, the tunnel's layout, and its condition made it a strong candidate for immediate use. If true, this meant North Korea was sitting on a tunnel ready to fire the moment its leadership gave the order. The history of North Korea's testing program makes this possibility more chilling. The regime has carried out detonations with little warning before. In 2009 and 2013, nuclear tests shocked the world because there had been no clear external buildup. Those blasts proved that when North Korea wants to act, it can act suddenly. If Tunnel 3 has been maintained for operational readiness, then another detonation could happen at any time, without the world seeing it coming. There is also the issue of reuse. North Korea has previously reused test tunnels until collapse, particularly with Tunnel 2. That pattern suggests Tunnel 3 may be deliberately preserved for repeated detonations. For some, the most disturbing possibility links back to defector sketches of underground rail lines inside Punggye-ri. If Tunnel 3 is connected to such a system, it would not only be a chamber for testing, but a hub where nuclear devices could be brought in discreetly. If the Tunnel 4 represents revival, the South Portal represents readiness. Together they show that the 2018 spectacle of demolition may have been little more than theater, and that Punggye-ri's most dangerous chambers were never gone. What if it had all been for show? During the 2018 dismantlement, no international inspectors were allowed to enter the tunnels before or after the blasts. No measurements were taken, no seismic equipment was placed, and no verification was made about what actually lay beyond the demolished entrances. The world had to take North Korea's word. Experts warned at the time that this was not dismantlement, but a performance. Those warnings now echo with haunting accuracy. Analysts argued that blowing up the visible entrances could be achieved without touching the deeper sections of the tunnels. The portals may have collapsed, but the miles of galleries and chambers deeper inside the mountain could easily have remained intact. Those warnings now echo with haunting accuracy. Analysts argued that blowing up the visible entrances could be achieved without touching the deeper sections of the tunnels. The portals may have collapsed, but the miles of galleries and chambers deeper inside the mountain could easily have remained intact. Now, with Tunnel 4 being reopened and Tunnel 3 showing signs of quiet readiness, one question demands an answer. If Punggye-ri was never truly gone, what will the world face when the next detonation comes?